Okay, welcome everyone to this webinar, and thank you for being here and giving me the opportunity to share my experience and how trauma affects your business. Before I start, I'd like to acknowledge country, acknowledgement of country. So if you ladies know yours and you'd like to share in the chats, you're most welcome to. With every conscious breath I take on this vast and majestic land, I have faith it feels my love, honor, and appreciation for its beauty, ancientness, and spirituality. The land where I live and work is Whadjuk country because I'm in Perth, Western Australia. I acknowledge the Noongar people as the traditional and ongoing custodians of this land. I share with you my respects for the elders, past and present, who make me feel nurtured, embraced, accepted, and safe. And when I was doing this one with a girl who she's Aboriginal and she's looking at inclusivity, something that I really appreciated was how with Aboriginal, my understanding of it is when Aboriginal people, well, you go in as a stranger, you leave as a friend. And I really like that. And I feel here too, it's about with our trauma, it's how can we become friends with our trauma? So, you know, because we become strangers when we've gone through something traumatic. It's how can we come back to being our own friend? And the other thing I love for me, which has been really important, is I feel safe on their land. They create this beautiful sense of safety. I think that's also part of trauma healing. And this is why we don't often realize that sense of safety we take into our business, which affects how we do business. So I'm Chantal, psychotherapist and Reiki master. And what my vision is for women to be able to really realize their dreams by really gaining clarity and understanding of how trauma affects, how to affect your ability to manifest a financially successful business, how to connect those dots. Because often, as I said, we don't talk about it a lot. In fact, I haven't really, it wasn't until my psychologist pointed it out to me a couple of years ago that light bulbs went off, because I'd created these two separate human beings. The personal one that I was struggling, but I put on this brave face as I walked out the door. And of course, didn't work very well. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about what is trauma, events that trigger it, the effects on your nervous system, and these physical and psychological effects of this unresolved lingering trauma. Because something I found as well is that I had a lot of the mindset. I'd really dealt with the trauma itself, but often what we don't realize is what can keep going on and how that can affect you years later. And it can come up in the most unexpected areas when you think, my God, I thought I dealt with that, but there it is. Of course, how it affects your business. I will suggest strategies to you and how I can then support you, my offer to you. So let's get started. So this is the official definition. Trauma is an emotional response to a devastating, distressing event that is threatening to your sense of safety and survival, and it disrupts your body's natural equilibrium. What it does, it then creates an overwhelming amount of stress, excuse me, that exceeds your ability to cope. So what is trauma? Again, something that has happened that has fundamentally changed your life. Your foundation of everything that you knew has been pulled away from you. So your life as you knew it no longer exists. And this is what I find interesting. And I've been reading a lot of Peter Levine's work. So I'm bringing him in because that's why I've got the tiger there, because it's walking the tiger. And Willem and I, my partner, after he had a huge scare a few years ago, made a decision to go to India. That was something for us. And I watched animals, and I'll bring this in a moment, what they do to support their nervous system that we lose sight of, whether we have trauma or not, okay? So and also he says things like it can be benign meaning ordinary daily things can affect us in trauma that we push aside. So of course, they're the big things like being in the army, defense force, but there's violence, abuse, assault, divorce, an accident. See, for me, it was a car accident. The car accident in itself wasn't a big car accident, but it's which I'll come to in a moment, I took into the accident, because I could never understand why did I trigger into complex PTSD when the accident in itself wasn't serious. Yes, I had awful whiplash injury, but I couldn't understand. There was this big gap. Okay, so it took me a long time to understand that. And that's why I want to talk about it, because don't underestimate what can send you into trauma. You could be in a religion, a cult, rape, of course, neglect in childhood, bullying at school, in the office, traumatic pregnancy, birth. Because a lot of these things they're normal in our lives. These things happen, but what we don't work is we don't work through them. We give each other platitudes. We minimize our own experiences. So coming back to like moving home or country, even if it's in the same country and moving states, that can cause trauma. You know, and you might, even though you might want to do it, it might be too big. So it depends what you're bringing into it, okay? Children leaving home, even if it's going to a kindy, leaving home, or that can bring all sorts of things up. And then a diagnosis that emotionally and or physically harmful. So that an unexpected one, as I mentioned earlier, we got an unexpected one with my partner. We're lucky he's alive, but it was so unexpected, it actually triggered things in both of us, because suddenly you're faced with, hang on, this wasn't where my life was meant to go. And I actually laugh now, but at the time I didn't. I'd just done my 10-year vision. And I'll come to that, even though I couldn't vision much, because trauma doesn't, you have no hope, but that's a bit further down the track. And I just literally typed it all out, had all my vision in there, 5, 10 or 1 year. And then he goes and has this huge diagnosis. We're lucky he's alive, which threw me completely. Now, at the time, it wasn't laughable, but I look back now and think these things happen. You know, we can't control and predict things. We don't know when we're going to go into a trauma response. And of course, experiencing a traumatic event vicariously. I didn't understand that. And the way Peter Levine, the example he gives, this young man had lent his sister his headphones when she went for a jog. She got killed. So he went into trauma and into PTSD, because if he hadn't given her the headphones, she might have heard the car, she might not have died. Okay, so don't underestimate that when you witness something or hear something, that you can also have a reaction to that. So factors that contribute to it. This is why trauma is personal. This is why we need to talk and create a sense of acceptance without judgment, because we can look at someone and go, well, that wasn't that bad, but it was for that person. Okay, so like I said, with my car accident, wasn't bad in the scheme of things. So why did I react that way, not someone else? Well, because it's your culture, your values, beliefs, your history. So you see, what we don't realize is we bring our history in. So I thought I dealt with a lot of my childhood violence, my childhood upbringing. I hadn't. Everything came to the fore, and that's what absolutely totally triggered me into complex PTSD. I didn't even know that existed at the time, because we didn't talk about it much. We didn't have as much information out there. Of course, the support system you have around you, whether that be family, community, like if you are living somewhere where you're getting to know people. I'd only just moved up to the hills, even though it was 40 minutes only from where I lived. I didn't have doctors. I didn't have physios. I didn't have anyone here, not many friends either. And at that point, I couldn't get into the car. So I didn't know. I didn't have that support system around me. Darling, that is why I got out of the healthcare field, trauma every day. I'm not surprised, darling, with the work that you are doing. Okay, so I just got to close this. And your age can all make it. So if being young, older, because when you're young, it all accumulates. And of course, the way you see the world. And that's why I put the world there, because it's your view of the world. How do you see things? How have you been taught? What is your foundation from childhood? Okay. So what happens with trauma is, and what we don't realize is, because I don't know about you ladies, so I'd love you to share. I was brought up independent, superwoman. I didn't need any help. I didn't know how to ask for help. So of course, when you have a trauma experience or something that throws you, what happens is you don't realize that you have the inability to process, cope, and understand with what happened. Okay, you don't get it. Then the other thing happens is that you freeze. And you're coming from that place of stuckness. Now, you don't realize that, because that's all happening within. You're in this place of shock. So what then you see, it affects how you see yourself and how you behave in the world and in your business, of course, because suddenly you don't feel safe. You don't understand what's happening. You can't bring it all together. So what you're doing is you're remaining stuck in the reaction of the trauma with this immense sense of loss of control. That's what happened for me, and a big sense of shame. So how does this come about? So would anyone like to share anything? I'll just do a stop share for now. Anyone like to share anything before we go on? Any experiences? And remember, only do it if you feel comfortable doing it. And if you don't, we'll put it in chats.
Yeah, well, look, I guess starting off with myself moving over and, so saying support networks has been a key thing, I feel, that has changed the way I'm dealing with maybe some of my traumas in my life, and not having that support network that I'm used to having or had in the past. So you kind of miss that. So I really connected with the support network and how you function on a day-to-day basis, especially within business, trying to achieve your goals within your business, but then also having children and, having the day-to-day chores and life. Having that support to be able to assist with that is such a key thing, I think.
Thank you, Kes, and I agree with you. And it's only when you don't have it do you actually realize how much you need it.
And how much you had.
And how much you had, exactly right. Or how much you didn't have. So in your case, it's how much you had. So how do you then go out to find that support when you're coming from this base of feeling really distraught, loss of control? It's then harder to go out, because how will people respond?
Your self-esteem seems to decrease quite a bit.
Right. That's right. It sort of goes right out the window. It's like, hang on, who am I now? Who am I?
Exactly.
Yeah, who am I? So thank you for sharing that. Okay.
I think for me, I didn't have the support. And as you know, I had the twins when I was 20. I didn't know I was having twins until the second one was born. Then I immigrated from Zimbabwe and went to South Africa. I had no one in South Africa. Long story short, you just do what you got to do 24/7. You carry on doing that. And then one day, like in one of your slides, when kids leave home, emptiness syndrome exists. And when my twins decided early 20s that they were going to go and travel, which was amazing for them, and lots happened in between, lots of other stuff, good, bad, ugly happened in between. And when they leave, that's your purpose. My purpose was looking after these boys, these real boys. They didn't really need mum. And all of a sudden I was on my own. Yes, I had friends, but nobody understood because I was such a young mum. They were out partying, coming home early hours of the morning, and I was just being a mum. So then when they left, I thought, oh, my whole world had turned upside down. And not knowing, not having, as I mentioned, any support structure, I supported myself by relying on looking after the kids.
Yes. Yeah. So go on, sorry.
Yeah. So you sort of think, what now?
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly what that support structure that you had has gone. You as who you knew yourself has gone, even though there's a logic behind it. Yeah. Who am I?
And
so
I
thank you.
wanted them to go. I wanted them to fly.
Yes.
I wanted them to go and be successful, which they are today. But then I just looked for the next thing that sort of got me through in recruitment, Cass. Recruitment is, I was helping people find jobs, and that was so self-fulfilling because it's what I loved, especially in the medical fraternity, finding, getting nurses and doctors and that kind of thing. So I always put myself into helping everybody else. And that's what made, and still does, makes me tick as a person.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. And it's how can you support yourself in that? Because again, we're out there. How do we come back to also support us? It's coming back to the, alignment and looking after ourselves too. But thank you, Jenny, for that. Appreciate that. Okay. And Darlene, do you want to share anything? Otherwise, I'll go back to share screen. Okay, I'll do that. Let's go share screen. Okay. So, all right. So what happens is, and we have three parts of the brain, and I've tried to keep it as simple as possible because it took me a long time to understand what it was all about when my psychologist kept talking to me about the unconscious bias and, the amygdala and all that. So basically we have three levels of brain. And when in our lives, particularly if we've gone through trauma, we come from an automatic response. So that's from the reptilian brain. That's our instinct. That's the one that keeps us safe. That's the one that's flight or fright. Okay. So that what happens is then because you assess everything for possible danger and you don't realize you're doing that. And that's why we stay on hyper alert, hypervigilance. Okay. And when we don't deal with the trauma, really deal with it also going into our bodies, not just our mindset, It's all those little moments that accumulate that become big and overwhelming. So what happens is that when you've been through a trauma, something happens. So I know for me, I couldn't bear noise. I'd jump. That was an automatic response from my reptilian brain that went through to my cortex. So the intellect doesn't come into play. There's no logic, okay? And I think this is something we also need to realize. Okay, thanks, Darlene, for letting me know that. Okay, she's just walking, so she's just listening rather than that. So what we don't realize is that we come from emotion versus logic. This responds immediately. And this is something we need to understand. How do we support ourselves to be able to do that? And that is then what we take into business. And we don't realize this is what stops us, because we need things to be safe and predictable and not come from here. And I know it'll always be there for me. And I think for a lot of us, it'll always be there. But you learn how to manage it. You learn to understand what you need to do to support yourself in all of this. Okay, so just keeping that in mind as we now go to, so when, as I mentioned earlier, went to India, and this is a photo my partner took. We were watching this tiger getting ready to go for the kill, and his sympathetic nervous system coming. So that's what happens when you go into flight or fright. Our whole body goes into this state of getting ready to go, okay? And we tense our muscles up, you know, the blood flow, blood pressure goes up, heart rate goes up. We're focused on doing that. What then the animals do is they come back into the parasympathetic system, where, now this isn't the photo of the actual tiger because it was in bush, but they just sit. So this tiger then didn't get the kill, and it just sat there for as long as it needed. We could just see its tummy bellowing in and out until it came back down, and it actually calmed itself down. Okay, so that's that homeostasis. That's what creates the balance. Now, what us as human beings do, irrespective of trauma, we don't allow ourselves to pause. We don't allow our bodies to come back to that state of rest. Okay, so when you've been through trauma, you're on this constant alert, so on this constant sympathetic, and that's why we get exhausted, creates illnesses and all sorts of things. So on the other hand, what happens when you've gone through trauma is the freeze mode. Now, as Peter Levine explained, the animal, so in this case, it's a deer. This is my partner's one in Africa. And I do like to share where we've been, because again, this is all part of the healing. This is all part of us having the courage to step out back into the world and do things that we didn't expect to do, and to enjoy our lives again, because you can. There's hope, there's joy, there's life after trauma. Anyhow, so what happens is with the animal that's being chased, they drop and pretend they're dead. So they're going to freeze mode. And the goal there is they ideally hope that the chaser, like in this case, the tiger, will go away and leave them. Or if they take them to their den to go and then get their little ones, they can then get up and move. But see, the important bit is you come out of freeze mode by moving. We don't move. It remains stuck in us. And that's why now there's so much talk about not just being mindset. We've got to do somatic work, body work, get back into our bodies to help move this energy that is stuck. Okay. So of course, what happens is it affects your nervous system. Trauma rewires you. The way I see it, it's like spaghetti. That's how I see it. Or those of you who live in Australia, the NBN, you know, how they have all the wiring is all like this, and it doesn't fire up at times. And it affects your sense of safety and well-being. And for me, it was not only in the world, I needed to feel safe again in my body, because you lose all external reference points. Nothing makes sense anymore, okay? And you've got to readjust to life, but how do you do that? And that is what takes time. And because our world is so busy moving and doing, and you've got to get over it, we don't allow ourselves the time to heal, okay? We just get back, like I think you said, Jenny, earlier, you just got back onto the next thing. You just go back, you just keep going. No, we keep going no matter what. And we think that's easy, because sometimes stopping feels really scary too, you know? So again, it's not that just the event that needs to be dealt with, it's the lasting feelings and effects of trauma, okay? That, as I said earlier, can come back up well later in your life. Okay, so because you couldn't take care of yourself and you couldn't cope, shame arises. You know, because you might feel embarrassed, you had such a strong reaction. As I said to you earlier about my car accident, you couldn't protect yourself because, you know, you've been strong, independent, you've kept going, you've been functioning. In fact, you've been in a way even high functioning, and suddenly you can't do anything anymore because you feel unsafe, okay? And you suddenly lose this ability to deal with things on your own. So that means you need to ask for help, let alone going to a professional. But how do you ask family, friends? And this comes back to your support system, okay? So many of us don't like to actually ask for help. We prefer to give. And the lesson I needed to learn was, well, if I like to give, why wouldn't I allow someone else to give me and give them the pleasure to give me? That was a big turnaround for me, okay? And then there's that giving and receiving, because by me receiving, I'm giving back. And there's that beautiful energy exchange that's happening for us, all right? So it's also what happens is you remain on this constant alert. So of course, you've got this adrenaline flowing through you, cortisol flowing through you. I often found I couldn't sleep. I was an insomniac. I had a lot of panic attacks because I didn't realize I'd remained frozen, okay? That's what you need to find. And of course, you struggle with who you've become. So again, for me, and I'm going to stop share for a moment here in case you wish to share as well. I went from this woman who, yes, I'd had childhood stuff, but I'd gone from this woman who could travel the world in the car anywhere, because I'd learned to drive in Europe. Dad took me down around the Champs-Elysees young. And I spoke languages, to suddenly not being able to get off the couch in my late 40s. That was, I just had no idea what had happened to me. And that frightened me beyond measure. And I actually didn't know if I was ever going to pull back through again. Okay. So I've gone from this high functioning to this, in fact, I look at it now, non-function. Yes, I was breathing. Yes, I was having a shower, but I just couldn't function properly for what for me was proper. Would anyone like to share what it's been like for them in that context?
I can start off, yeah. I guess with myself going through losing my mother quite traumatically, you could use the word. She was on board the MH17 plane that was shot down over Ukraine.
Okay.
For that, and being such a positive, happy person throughout life, not really letting, you know, international relations and things going on in the world affect me, because I lived within my bubble of my little existence, which was very comfortable, very out there, bubbly person. However, once that happened, this anger just came over my body and my life. And I've, you know, to hear some of the closest people to me tell me how much I've changed as a person because of that has been very hard, because you can see that it's not just you feeling it, everyone else can see it as well. So that has been something that you get, the shame of not being the same person anymore, the anger and the feelings that come with things that you can't control. So trying to place that and work through that has been, one of those giant stepping stones, I think.
Thank you for sharing that. And Darlene just sends hugs and, you know, hearts. It is, thank you, because Darlene, that is also something good. The emotion, we're not meant to feel anger, jealousy, rage, you know. So what do? You stuff it down, don't you?
And then it comes out in some of the worst ways possible that you don't think, like, I don't want to be angry with my children or my children to feel my energy.
That's right.
And then it just kind of goes into that cycle, doesn't it? I don't want to create a cycle of trauma for my children. However, it's learning how to deal with those emotions and where to place them and work through them. So.
Exactly right. And then not to take away from your experience, because then what we do is we take that. So here it is happening in your home, then we take it into business, because otherwise we won't be professional.
Exactly right.
So where are you going to, and often you'll show your anger, I'm assuming here, not having it'll come out at home rather than in business. Oh, you can't do emotion.
You know, just the frustration. I worked in employment services for quite some time, helping people on Centrelink, people with disabilities find employment, which I found really rewarding. And I got into that before the incident happened. However, dealing with other people's traumas, and which was fine. I love to help people. And like Jenny and I have discussed, you know, that being there to assist people with what they're going through and give them different avenues for positivity is great. However, when you're hearing other people's traumas and there's always something going on, it's hard to either deal with your own or be able to help those people as much as you want to. Because sometimes you go, oh, wow, you fell over and this happened. Like, oh, you know, and you kind of change the avenue of the way you're looking to assist people because you're so, you know, in your own zone that you don't know what's going on.
That's exactly right. Thank you. And as Darlene says here, I avoided my emotions and buried them. I was taught not to show emotions. So see, that comes in as well. You know, we're not taught how to show them. So Jenny, would you like to share anything before I go back to sharing the screen?
Yeah, I think I went through a lot, and in my now in my late 50s, I'm getting a lot better at, I've always needed people to need me, even the wrong people. And I allow people to take advantage of me. And you don't know at the time, but when you think back, you think to yourself, gosh, did I actually put myself through that? Especially male relationships that you thought, because I've always been take people at face value, because why would someone want to screw me over, put it in one of those kind of words? Why? Because I don't do that to people, so I don't expect people to sort of do that to me. And yeah, I did allow myself to be taken advantage of, but it's because I wanted to be needed. So
exactly.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing that, because again, guess what we do? We take that into business. We want to be needed, you know, and then when we don't feel people want us, it triggers us. We don't feel we're good enough. So it's see how it all interplays what we do here. So thank you, ladies. We'll go back to Darlene. Just having the tools so we can help people and be healthy ourselves normally is a big thing. Oops, hang on, it just let me. Is normally a big thing in the healthcare field. I wasn't taught this. Working on the front line, I saw trauma every day and had it towards me when I was helping. Now learning what is right for me. So again, perfect. Thanks, darling, because this is exactly why we need to have these conversations, to bring it up so we can support each other without judgment. You know, and I think the other word I learned a while ago, we can accept someone what was it? We might accept them for who they are. We might not understand it because it's out of our reference point, but we can just accept them for who they are and hold them in that space, you know, and give each other empathy, as Brené Brown says. Empathy is, you don't necessarily understand the experience, but you understand the emotions, okay? That, for me, was a big turnaround. Okay. Oops, sorry, Darlene, just before I go. Yeah, why it's so important to talk about this, and that is the healthy, and that is healthy to seek help. Exactly right. It takes away the shame. Exactly right. And that's why I think what we're doing here, ladies, is taking away the taboo, because it happens to all of us. I want women to see it happens to us, normal, everyone, anyone, you know. So physical signs of trauma, which often can just be what we consider normal, is obviously we're always on guard, which I've already mentioned. State of hypervigilance, so the inability to relax. So often I found it for a long time, I couldn't pause. I didn't know how to stop, because what if I couldn't get back up again? Constant aches and pains, you have insomnia, nightmares, disrupted sleep. So this is how trauma can come through. Now, this big one was easily startled and frightened. Not everyone has that. Panic attacks. You can also have sexual dysfunction because you've lost all sense of sensuality, sense of self, and you have gut issues. I know for me, I've only just recently had some gut issues. So these are things that can happen to anyone, but they can be also part of trauma. Okay, so then there's the psychological ones. Obviously, like we said earlier, shock, denial, disbelief. So we can, and that's also part of grief that can happen as well. So when my dad died, that's when we actually look back now, 23 years ago, however long it was. I dealt with the grief, but we now look back, that's when I actually triggered into my first round of PTSD. And there's a long story that I won't go into, but it was a shock what had happened and how it had, came from nowhere. So what happens is, of course, then we learn to withdraw from others and isolate self. Now that can also be people who are already introverts. So for those of us who aren't, we withdraw, we isolate. Introverts are more like that, but they might withdraw even further. Of course, what that does is, and I'll talk about this when we talk about visibility in business, you don't want to put yourself out there. So of course you have lack of self-trust, which is, Cass, what you mentioned about self-esteem. You know, we lose trust in ourselves, we lose trust in the world. And what I didn't realize, hope for the future. I couldn't visualize, I could see no hope. I was so busy just being here and now. Anything else was too scary and too big. And again, like we said earlier, all these mood swings and all these intense emotions come up that, oh, where did that come from? I shouldn't be feeling that. Like Darlene said, we're not taught to anyhow. And the other big thing I found was difficult, memory problems. I had difficulty concentrating, difficulty focusing. I couldn't put anything together. Oops, so I'll go back. I didn't know, again, discombobulated. So I had all the concepts there, but I couldn't tie them together. I didn't know how to weave them into something logical. So of course that doesn't help with business when you're trying to put things together and see. So when I had my see how it's going to come together, my regional business coach would say, let's do this, this, and this, and setting up tech. I actually just couldn't do it, and made me feel needy. I needed her to actually do it for me. And I couldn't understand that because I'm meant to be bright, intelligent, and able to do this, because I could do that before the car accident. Then suddenly I couldn't. Okay. And that held me back because I felt very embarrassed and ashamed. And of course, people don't want you to need you. That's not their role as a business coach. They're there to guide you and show you this is what you can do. You are to implement it. But I needed someone to actually help me to do it. Okay. Just what, yes, that's it. Darlene's going, what did you just say? Something? Memory was my problem. It is always frustrating at times. That's exactly right.
After that.
And I don't know about as you not good as I found that's also part of menopause. So I was in menopause and trauma, and it was like both was happening at the same time. It was like, I won't say what I thought, but yes, what did you oh, what was your name? Oh, Jenny, what did we talk about? And that can be within 5 minutes of it going. So that's discombobulating. How do you run a business on that? Because you get scared. You don't remember things.
I found with the shock side of things and those two things relating,
Yeah.
when you're going through the shock of something so traumatic happening, the fact that you lose such a great part of your memory at that time, I think it's to protect your brain or something at that time.
Right.
But it was quite surreal to realize how much of your memory goes at a time when you're trying to protect yourself from what's happening.
That's exactly right. And you're right, because that's what grief does. You go into, it's like these hormones happen. Like Darlene, you might know this more being a nurse, but I just, from what I remember, your hormones get into shock. So it does get you through. And that's often why my experience was, yes, in menopause, yes, our body's trying to protect us. That's right. And I know for me, from what I remember learning at the time when Dad died, that's often why after 4 to 6 weeks, that's when suddenly you realize it actually has happened. You know, because you've
just couldn't remember my mum at all.
Yeah, that's it.
Couldn't remember her voice. I couldn't remember even the picture of her face. I was like, how? Like, how does that, you know, it was very, I think it took 1.5 years for me to actually have a vivid memory of my mum again without,
Wow.
Very strange.
And thank you, because I've just gone goosey, and that's exactly it. And thank you for sharing, ladies, so honestly, because we've all got different experiences. Yet we've all experienced something similar, you know, and this is why, again, I keep saying we need to talk. And Darlene's saying here, in grief, when the support goes is when we need it most. Yeah, that's right. So, of course, we're in this world of turmoil, and it's always on that unconscious level, coming back to the limbic brain. We live from here. We actually don't realize it's that unconscious bias. We're unaware of what we are doing. We're unaware of why we are reacting that way. And that's why it's so important to get professional help, is to help you untangle it, you know, and to make you understand what's going on. So, of course, this takes you into your business. So, of course, when you're in business, what happens is you carry on as normal, of course, and you walk on with a mask around you, or you can do. And what you're doing is you're hiding the fact that you're not coping. Because again, as we said earlier, particularly when I was in the career, in the business world, I suppose it's anywhere, don't bring your emotions to work. Don't show that you're feeling anything. So of course that shuts us off. So you have like these two people, women happening, or in this case, we're going to talk women because we're women here. That's what happens, okay? And we don't know how to share and show. And that's when I found, for me, I made mistakes. I would have outbursts of emotions. Oh my God. So of course, triggers the shame, doesn't it? What will people think of me? So a typical response, of course, is for most of us is, I'm fine. That others are worse than me, because of course that's what we do. We compare ourselves, or someone else might say that to us, might have come from childhood. Eat your food because someone else doesn't have food or is worse off. Don't worry about me, I'm okay. So again, it's that pushing people away and negating your own experience. And you want to believe you're okay, but in reality you aren't. So in business, what we do is we find it hard perhaps to reach out to ask someone for support, a coach, or whatever it might be, or just a friend, having a buddy to help you with this. Because we're meant to be able to cope on our own, remember? That's how we're being trained to bring up. And as Darlene says, shame and guilt are the biggest with me, especially because of financial issues as well. That's right, and that's what I'll be talking about next, Darlene. Because deep down, you just don't believe in yourself. You don't believe you'll get what you want, and you don't believe you'll get what you desire because you don't believe you deserve. So your business then carries your DNA of your trauma. And then for me, what I realized even just recently when I was preparing all of this, I realized my business had become my trauma as well. So I'd carried it so in there, it completely overwhelmed me. That was quite a realization for me, Yes, you are reading my mind, Darlene, that's right. So, okay, so again, how does this affect your finances? Well, whether you have a product or a service, how do you price it? Do I underprice? Do I overprice? What is my worth? Will people come to me? What will they think? Will people think that I'm, up myself, ego? So pricing is a big thing, how to put your prices on there. How we spend. So you can either spend reactively, or I'll just go to that shiny object, or I'll just buy that. So you come from I need that now. Because also a lot of marketing has been based around, from what I'm hearing, so this is my experience, NLP is based on your fear. You're going to miss out. So you spend, I need that. Rather than we no longer know how to discern and step back. Do I actually really need to do that? Yes, no. So you can either overspend or underspend. Okay, because then you're holding on to all your money, you don't, because you get scared of the future. And another thing is you can't budget, forecast, cash flows, P&L, all that is just beyond your comprehension. You find it hard to sit down and do that. Again, issues around money. A lot of that is mindset as well, and your history can come into that. Then, of course, you can't ask for monies owed. I mean, what is it about us that we can't ask? You've done a service, you provided a product, you might have 14 days, 30 days, then you don't know how to ask for money. You feel bad, you feel awkward, and again, shame around dollars. Again, another thing we do, you give away too much for free, because for a while there, I think it's changing for a while, you've got to do all these freebies, you've got to give away good content so people will come to you. So you're giving away all the time. Again, that ties into giving away. How do I price myself? Again, because you don't feel you deserve. And again, it's a guilt and shame around talking about money. So we avoid it.
Chantal, you did that the other day.
Yes, I did, didn't I?
You wanted to go an extra half an hour, and I said, no.
That's right.
I booked in with her hour with you. Let's do that.
Yes, that's right. Thank you, Jenny. And I really appreciate you pointing that out, because again, this is coming back to when I made a commitment to Jenny that we'd have an hour. She was coming for a certain reason, but we did something else first. So for me, it was like that didn't count in that hour. So Jenny gave me a really beautiful reflection back. Actually, yes, it was. It was perfect. Exactly what happened was perfect. Yeah. And made me realize, right, I've got to do this differently. Okay. I overgave. I felt embarrassed. I wasn't giving her what she'd come for. So see, all these things come into play. And I've done a lot of.
I asked for the change.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You asked, and I didn't hear it because I had it in my head. We were doing this, not that. Yeah. That's it. Thank you, Jenny. Again, another realization, because that's another thing I found, all or nothing. My mother used to say to me, you're always black or white. And I thought that was part of my personality as also being Capricorn, but no, it's also can be part of trauma. You're all or nothing. Okay. So when I was preparing for this webinar, I went all in for 3 weeks, and you should have seen my desk and floor was full of paperwork. I went so in that I then crashed, and then nearly couldn't do it because I'd burnt myself out. I'd gone the other way, and then it was into nothing. I'd lost all motivation. So again, just sharing that these things can happen. How do we find that middle ground, or the way to support you? And this is coming back to the card we did initially, before we started, we drew a card called alignment. How do you align with yourself and what's right for you? Okay, so we talked about earlier concentration. You get easily distracted. Oh, I'll just look at my mobile, or I will just, you know, do a card. Oh, so we go all over the place, okay, rather than just being present. So of course, therefore, you're unable to concentrate and you don't think clearly. There's like this fog over you. You can't think clearly. Like we said before, gaps in memory. So you might remember this, this, and this, but you can't string it together. And it's hard to keep a train of thought. So I know when I was having conversations, so I had a skincare range before I was doing this, and I'd go out and do networking, and I'd be there and I'd be thinking, oh my God, what have we just said? I just couldn't bring it together. And now I'm normally a good talker. I'm normally good at remembering things. Suddenly I couldn't do this. I'm really, and then I asked, okay.
I do apologize. I just have to dart off for 1 second. My daughter's school is calling.
Okay, that's fine, Cass. You do that and then just come back. Thank you. Darlene just said, thank you. I asked, if you had a webinar, I could put in the description of the video. You see, yes, that helped me to make a change in my life. I didn't have to do it just a certain way. So that's right. Okay, so again, you become forgetful. I needed not only a diary, I needed you or the client to email me to remind me, then I'd forget you'd email me, okay? I was scattered. I didn't know how to prioritize. So again, what happens is they always say prioritize on what's going to make you money. I prioritized on things that I could still do, which was admin, okay? So I was spinning my wheels and not getting anywhere. And of course, you jump from task to task, okay? You get waylaid. This is this shiny object syndrome we talk about, you know? And you don't complete anything as you can't follow through. Now, there's some people in life, when I was doing like the disc, there's all sorts of things you can do to find out your personalities. Some people are starters, some people are finishers, some are in between. But when you've been through trauma, I sometimes couldn't even start, let alone follow it through. So what happens is in business, you micromanage because there's this high need for everything to be safe, in control, and predictable. I didn't realize how much that affected my life, was this need to have predictability. So of course, what happens is you remain rigid in your planning. So you can't see the future. You can't allow yourself to have something happen. You need everything to go as planned. So of course, there's a lack of spontaneity. And then you don't take the risks you'd like to take or you want to take and you believe you can, you know. So Darlene says, Aries, type A, personality A, great starter. There you go, you know. So what happens is you become unproductive and get lost in detail and perfection. Jenny, would you like to share anything at this point? Because I know I'm talking quite a bit. Would you like to share anything at this point, or I can just carry on?
I think even though we've had, all of us have had different traumas in life, and a lot of trauma and a lot of changes as what you do. So as I mentioned earlier, just having to be that mum to these twins because I needed them to survive, so I had to look after them. I've had some successes with that type of personality though, because I'm a Sagittarian. I get bored very quickly. So I suppose that also helps me in terms of not afraid to take risks and I'm that glass half full. I'm more optimistic than anything else. And being successful in the work that I had done over the 20 years in recruitment, etc., I was able to start a little business back in Durban on a desk, no computer, just paperwork, that kind of thing, because it's the little business needed me kind of thing. I needed to make it work, exactly like, you know, looking after the twins. I needed that to make it sort of work, and it did work. 4 years, and then the immigration here to Australia as well. Then I went on a mission to get my kids here. So I've always needed that, so that possibly not to deal with what I should have maybe dealt with along the way.
Yeah.
I always threw myself into something, into people, into the immigration, into starting that little business, in work. Because that's what got me through. And if I was always there for everyone else, because then I didn't have to talk about me.
Yeah,
I could sit and talk about you.
Thank you. That's right.
Yeah, your problems, your issues and whatever is, there's always that person worse off than you. So I just left everything And then it comes back and hits you in the back of the head. Hence, I got the adrenal fatigue about 5 years ago. And it's floored me over the last couple of years because I've just never dealt with anything.
That's it. Thank you. And it does catch up. Exactly right.
It caught up big time.
Yeah, that's right. It does catch up with you. And then you realize, then you think, well, why now, not then? And this is what you don't realize. This is where you connect the dots, you know.
You just put it off and put it off.
And put it off. That's exactly right. Exactly right. So, of course, with that comes with, you can't easily create structure. It's hard to think logically. So and you get this analysis paralysis. So in a way, we think we're doing something because in a way we are. But are we really? I mean, we might still be paralyzed and frozen in that state. We're not moving the way we think we'd like to move. We just actually often just spinning our wheels, you know. And as a consequence, we find it hard to delegate and manage people because we've got to trust them, not ourselves. And that's unpredictable. So, of course, that comes to relationships. So, of course, you have difficulty managing people because you're unsure of yourself. You don't trust others. And what I did was, and I love this, you abdicate rather than delegate. What you do is you just hand it over to that person and then you let them go without delegating. And if we want to be leaders in our businesses, we need to be aware of what people are doing, don't we? You know, because they could be doing all sorts of things we don't want, you know. So the first year after leaving nursing, I couldn't do anything except survive each day. It's exactly right. That's right. So we become people pleasers. I think a lot of us women already are. So we please everyone, as you said, all our clients, all our suppliers, because we can't say no. Okay. And then we also over explain and justify if we do something. So I'm learning how to just go, that is just how it is, rather than going justifying, because that comes from that place of insecurity and people know what you're doing. You know, you can hear yourself. I can hear myself now when I do it. So I pause now before I do that. And of course you become defensive. So when you become defensive, blah, 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 you know, because you're coming back from that place of shame. And then it does, as I said earlier, create this dependency on coaches, mentors, groups, and peers, because you don't know how to do it on your own. You don't feel comfortable. You don't feel safe. You know, you're trusting everyone else by yourself. So of course you can't set your boundaries and you become the good girl. You respond to everything immediately. Okay, because you don't know how to go, actually, no, I don't need to do that now, or I don't need to do that at all. Then, of course, what does that affect? Our visibility. You don't, so because nowadays, whether you're doing it face to face or online, you don't know how you look or sound. Because nowadays, a lot of us, you know, we've got to hear ourselves. You know, I do meditations on YouTube and Insight Time, and I had to learn to like my voice, you know, because I could hear things that others couldn't. You know, it was always negative, of course. Then, of course, you have that imposter syndrome. You don't know enough. You don't have enough. Why would anyone listen to me if they only knew that deep within, you know, I'm struggling? And of course, it's all about that self-doubt, okay? That all comes into our business, and that's why it holds us back. We really need to work on ourselves to be able to be out there. And again, as I said earlier, don't feel enough, know enough, and you don't want to go out and be seen. Because again, if you go out, and even on Zoom, what I realized with the last one that I did, even though I felt comfortable with Zoom and what I was doing, but what I didn't realize was I couldn't predict if other people could come on. I didn't predict if they would be able to come on. And that actually threw me, because I thought I had myself all neat and tidy and safe. Okay. Because again, I needed to be able to predict it. And life isn't predictable. Life is always going to be changing. Things are going to be happening. Okay. Whether it's good, bad, or ugly, but we hold on to that to feel safe. And the last thing I realized was that, again, coming back earlier when they all said, do your vision boards, I couldn't, because you lose sight of that knowing in your intuition. You just can't imagine life full of possibilities, because all you're doing is you're just striving and just trying to survive every day. So you can't see long term. I didn't get that. I couldn't see beyond. And also, what if I get there, number one, you don't deserve, but something might happen again. Okay, something might happen. You know, so therefore we find it hard to strategize and plan ahead, because that's what they say, you need goals. So for me now, how I'm doing it is I'm aligning with me. I have loose goals. I have an idea how to get there, and I'm letting go of everything else because it wasn't suiting my personality. Okay. So of course, when you're in business, with what happens is you feel the need to keep doing and striving. So I felt I kept needing to do the goals. I needed to do a creative board. I needed to do all that, because I was coming from a base of fear. I'd miss out. I wasn't doing it right. Everyone else is doing it. I should be. Okay. So no matter what you do, you're never feeling you're enough, because you're not doing it also in your own way. You're not understanding your own personality. You're trying to fit into a box. And I think we've done that for most of our lives anyhow. So I'm hazarding a guess here. So business comes the same, okay? But what we need to do, ladies, is this is when we need to stop and recharge. Again, coming back to the tiger and the, to come back into balance, okay? Creating that homeostasis internally as well as externally, okay? Then that helps us remain motivated, upbeat, and excited. Because I could feel myself often losing the energy, often losing that excitement and that joy about why I'm doing it. Of course, that reflects in our visibility, how we come across our energies, okay? So again, this is called just resilience. How do we create resilience in our lives? What do we need to do? And that comes through personal awareness and self-reflection, one of the ways. So how can you support yourself in your business? So again, what we're going to do here is know your worth and financial worth. So it's knowing your own worth and what your financial worth that affects your pricing, okay? Again, how do we let go of this constantly doing, striving, going? How can we just pause and breathe and do whatever we need to do to support ourselves in that, you know? Okay, just going to say, yes, I can see my future. Sometimes it's hard to believe it. Getting better every day and know it'll happen. It is patience. It is patience. Again, it takes time. So how do you support yourself? Coming back to that beautiful place of inner calm, peace, and strength. It is there. It's just we've got to delve deep. And that's, again, when we can need professional support. Believing in yourself by saying yes to yourself. What is it about us that we're taught that it's selfish to say yes to ourselves? I actually don't want to do that. And this is the big one that I found was big for me and with the women that I'm working with, is working the way that best suits you. So that's your time management. So like Cass, you've got children, even though Jenny, yours are growing up, I don't have children, but how do I work? I'm a morning person. I'm not an evening person. So it's learning, when have you got the best energy? What do you need to do to support yourself? Trust your intuition and creativity, because all that can go out the window. So how do you come back to trusting yourself, your intuition, and knowing what is right for you? Not only listening to it, but acting on it. Okay.
Can I just add something there?
Of course you can.
When I first started working with my one client that Cassie actually works with as well, I was freaking out because when I originally got taken on, I was taken on as his executive assistant, such a fancy name. I just wanted to be business support, but anyway, went with that. And he got me to start doing recruitment again, and I didn't want to do recruitment. I got to the point that where I didn't know how to tell him. It took me 2 weeks to actually write him an email, and I read it and reread it and then didn't send it. And then when I finally sent it, he said, but didn't you see I was meeting with Cassie? She's going to come on board. She's going to be the recruiter. She's taking over this, this, and this. And I thought, oh my goodness, I freaked out for 2 weeks.
There you go.
But I wasn't going to ask him. I saw it in the diary. I wasn't going to say, why are you meeting with Cassie? It wasn't my business. And then Cass came on board and I thought, hallelujah. But I freaked out for 2 weeks, stressing myself.
Yeah.
And it all works out in the end anyway, because
That's
it's not what I wanted to do. And I think he probably knew along the lines. And yeah, now we got Cass. So how amazing.
It is. Thank you. But isn't it interesting how what we do to ourselves and put ourselves through? Exactly. Thank you.
The perception. And he was like, so, oh, okay. But
yeah,
that's okay.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I was probably going, my God, what's she talking about? Because he had a different thing in his mind. You interpret it in your way for where you are now and not being able to separate the two. So yes, that's a good example. Thank you, Jenny.
Yeah.
You know, and again, when I work with women, and also my own experience, putting strategies into place, you need to put strategies into place that you own. So I give you ideas. So again, beautiful one is just pause and breathe. It's a circuit breaker. I've been doing this for years, where you just simply pause, I put my hand on my heart and just, and that's just such a great feeling, because when you're being overwhelmed, when you're in fear, when you're anxiety, you get so caught up, it's just stepping away and just going pause and breathe. Again, we forget how to play and get creative. So what does that look like for you? So you need to find what suits you. For me at the moment, it's doing artwork, okay? Going into nature, I find that creative. Something my partner reminded me of, have a self-esteem file. You know, have something, okay, with, and it might be a physical, in those days, remember we used to get nice cards from people. Now you have it on your, email. So have a file that you can go into on a regular basis. Journal. Now, some people find journaling difficult to express your feelings. I've created a lovely journal ebook about, you don't need to journal with words. You can do it with poetry. You can do it with doodling, art, any way that's right, something to express it, because we need to make sense of what's happened to us. And you needed to do it in your own way. Eventually come into a sense of gratitude. When you're in trauma, you can't see the little things, okay? You miss those moments of joy. So it's learning, how can you still see those moments of joy? Something your children have done, a smile, a beautiful flower, whatever it might be. Forgiveness, that's a big one. Forgiving what's happened to you or for you, because that releases you. I do meditation. I call it insight meditation. That's how I was taught, because when you can sit still, whether you do it through walking, sitting, or whatever, I find for me sitting still is the best. I learned to do that. It took me a while. It then allows you to become aware of what's happening in your body, because we still can create distractions, okay, to keep us away from how we're really feeling. I find tapping helps me too. So there's just some ideas that you can do for yourself. So my offer is to you, I have a package called Transformation, 6 sessions, and it will go over about 8 weeks. And as a bonus, if you were to sign up now, you get an integration one. So you get a 7th one, because often I find we just need a follow-up at the end, and you get the journal, how to journal your mental health ebook. Because as I said to you, I really love doing this work. I really love supporting women. And what these sessions do, because I'm wanting to give women what was also given to me, is looking at who are you behind that trauma, because we've forgotten who we are, okay? Looking at what is holding you back, to reclaim that part of you. And sometimes it's not what you expect. So again, working with you, how can you become true to yourself, and again, aligned with your soul purpose? Because you might be finding either you're doing your soul purpose, you no longer want that, or just to reconnect you with that. So the sessions involved in that time, what we do is we work with talk therapy, so psychotherapy. I do meditations, tappings, cards, crystals, chakras, all those things to support you to gain a clarity and understanding of what is happening for you right now, okay? Then what we do is we look at how can we clear that pathway, what is still blocking you to get there, to come into a place of acceptance for who you are now. And it might not be the person you like you are, but just accepting this is where you are now, and that is okay. You're enough for who you are now, because we're going to clear the pathway to get you there. We're going to set some little goals. Who do you want to be? How do you want to feel? Because we often have forgotten what that's like, okay? And the other thing is, love to guide you to connect again with your intuition, body, and soul, because that's often what we forget. We're so focused on the mind and doing things, we forget this whole part of us that supports us in not only our healing, but in our lives, and of course in our businesses. Because then we become aligned. How do I want to do my business? How do I want to be? How do I want to come across? And it's shifting you from I can't to I can. So bringing you back into that sense of risk-taking, excitement, and adventure. So that is how I can support you, ladies. If you want to find out, book a clarity call with me. Check me out on my different social medias. And yeah, any comments, just know that you can email me. Keep in touch with me if you've got any questions coming up. So that is it for now. I'm sure I could talk a lot longer, as you might have guessed. I'm still recording for the moment. So I just wanted to say thank you, ladies. Is there anything else you'd like to share or add to what we've talked about before we come to a close?
I think for me, from the start to the finish of the slides and what you actually spoke about, has just put it all together in terms of the understanding, because all 4 of us have come from such different backgrounds with different things that have happened in our lives. However, we're on the same journey. And what you've encapsulated in what we've discussed today is awesome. It sort of just clarifies things, which I think where we are, what we can go through, what we are going through, and where we can get to in the end. So you've summed it up beautifully for me.
Thank you, Jenny.
Yeah.
I really appreciate hearing that. Really do. Thank you. Cass, you need to unmute.
Thank you. I do think as well, with everything that you've gone over, it gives you a better idea of maybe where you can highlight in your life where those traumas may have stemmed from, and kind of categorize them into different things in which then affect your business. So yeah, support, connections with people, self-esteem, all the different things that may affect different aspects of your business, and working towards each of those individually, and just being more aware of it, because sometimes you just don't think about that. Go, why am I not achieving this in my business? Why am I not feeling confident? Why am I not this? But it's really turning it around and highlighting, well, this is what's happened, and these are maybe some ways of dealing with it. So I would definitely like to work with you in the future in regards to getting some assistance with some of those pathways.
Thank you. And I appreciate that, Cass. You've just given me a good thought too. Two things I'd like to say. As one girl that I did the webinar with recently, she said, business coach is for business, psychotherapist or whatever is for personal. And we need to be able to separate those two. But when we are in small business, where do you want to put your money is coaching. We forget that sometimes we need the money, perhaps also from, as you said, this point of view. And in the future, because also there is, I have this session one, but I also want to say, when we talk, if you do book a 15-minute clarity call, we look at what works for you. You know, it's not just all or nothing. I have different ways I can work with you to suit you, your budget. And that's what I love about the psychotherapy that I was taught. It's person-centered because it's all about you. And that's why it's individual. We need to talk to make sure we feel comfortable with what I offer and who I am, because that's very important to be able to get that deeper healing. So thank you for saying that. I appreciate that.
Just quite a holistic approach to
that's exactly. And holistic is different for each person.
Exactly.
And that's why I suppose, oh my God, I'm going over a bit now, where I have found it hard for me with coaches doesn't mean they're good, but you see, they're doing it what suits them. It's their story, their way of doing it. It's how can it be holistic? So I'm learning now to take what I want from the coaches, but I had to do it through the psychotherapy to get me the confidence to be able to do that and not get caught up in their stories and their way of doing it, because I realized I bought some things, paid a lot of money, and it didn't actually suit me. But I wasn't discerning enough. I got caught up in the shiny object. I have to do this. And Darlene says, as we're finishing, recognizing how it shows up so that when it does, you can then look at it and nurture yourself. Exactly. Coming back to that resilience. You get to the point in business, or I do, where I have all the strategy knowledge, and now it is time for myself and the business and the energy of my business to heal. That's exactly right. And that's sometimes, now this is not what I'm going to add to Darlene, and sometimes that's when you need the support of a therapist, not a coach. Okay. That's where that comes in. So thank you, ladies. Oh my God, I'm so excited. I'm finding it really hard to stop and stop the recording. And yes, Darlene's saying one more thing. Yes, shiny syndrome, because I thought the coaches had the answers exactly right. And that's it. We need to find our own answers, and that's where we need different support. It's a different type of support. Oh my gosh, thank you, ladies, so much. I will now end this, and then yes, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be able to do this. Oh my love,
thank you.